Need your daily fix on mixed martial arts?
We're going to kind of recap Bellator 155.
From UFC 198.
Who's who?
Kind of a controversial decision.
And who's not?
I couldn't figure out why, and then it hit me.
Well, don't you fret, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your daily dose of MMA podcasts. Everything from the UFC, Bellator Fighting Championship, Extreme Cage Fighting, Invicta Fighting Championships, and so much more. Join us as we talk about some of the biggest names in mixed martial arts. We've got you covered here on Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Arnel Galeon, and hopefully you are doing well for yourself. Whether you live in the States or internationally, I hope you are doing fine. You, your friends, your family are all healthy. And if you live in the States, specifically in California, like me, then well, California could be reopening up in June, and we're going to be one of the last states reopening up officially. So hopefully the States is going to be really well it's going to go well, and reopening is going to go back up, so we can consistently have our sports yet again. It is really tiresome knowing that as both a basketball fan and an MMA fan, I want to have my sporting events happen 100% knowing that something isn't going to all of a sudden happen and cancel the events, or a fighter being pulled out, or an NBA player or NBA team pulling out from their events. It's so irritating as a fan, and hopefully, let's get our fingers crossed, that by June everything can go well in terms of sporting events. I know the NBA are aiming, here's the thing, the NBA are aiming for their Olympic trials, like their Olympic training camp to start happening in the span of like 2-3 months from now, which could overlap the NBA, but we're also hearing reports that the NBA could be going for a return sometime end of June. So there goes for basketball, and for the UFC, it's trying to make its way into being consistent. We've had 3 UFC events. We have had 3 UFC events in the past 8 days, and to be honest with you, it's a little bit of an overload, but I am excited and happy to know that I'm getting my mixed martial arts back. And you know what? I'm kind of in a good mood. I really am. If you guys haven't seen the past 3 UFC events, because, it's been 8 days, there's a lot happening in the past 8 days, including champions retiring, new champions, former champions returning back after some time off, new matchups, new possible matchups, new rankings being involved here. There's a lot happening in the world of the UFC, so let's dive to it today with the news brief. This is being reported in from Brett Okamoto, a ESPN staff writer, and also you've probably seen and heard of Brett Okamoto in his interviews with Dana White on ESPN. Title here, Khabib Nurmagomedov says father in critical condition with coronavirus. Undefeated UFC lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov on Monday confirmed reports of his father being in critical condition due to the coronavirus. Which is very strange because I remember a couple days ago, Khabib said that his father was sick, but it wasn't confirmed that it was coronavirus. But now, we now know it is a result of coronavirus. Speaking on Instagram in Russian, Nurmagomedov 31 confirmed that his father, I'm not going to say his name, but his father, because it's like a very complicated name, recently underwent heart surgery due to complications stemming from a previous ailment and the coronavirus. He went on to encourage people around the world to remain in self-isolation to combat the pandemic. This is coming in from Khabib himself. In my personal case, I've had more than 20 people sick from my family. Nurmagomedov said in comments translated by ESPN, more than 20 people were lying in the ICUs, and many of them are no longer among us. Many acquaintances have died, many parents of my relatives, everybody is having a hard time dealing with it. There is a lot written on the internet about my father. My father right now is located in a hospital. He's in critical condition as a result of this virus. It impacted his heart because last year he had a surgery there, and right now they did another surgery. He is in a very difficult situation, very difficult. We are asking Allah that He returns him to us. His father is widely credited to Nurmagomedov, his U.S.-based coach, Javier Mendez, and his manager and friend, Ali Abdelaziz. Sorry, I can't say his name, Ali Abdelaziz, as the main force behind his son's career. His father is responsible for getting his son into the sport of wrestling at a young age. Khabib Nurmagomedov, who lives in Dagestan, is a devout Muslim and currently is observing Ramadan, a religious fasting period. He encouraged Muslims to observe the end of the holiday in the absence of guests, rather than with traditional gatherings. Our learned Islamic scholars are telling us, stay home and do the holiday prayer, Nurmagomedov said. Don't have guests, don't go yourselves as guests. It is a very difficult situation. Nurmagomedov was scheduled to defend his 155-pound title belt against Tony Ferguson at UFC 249 on April 18. He was forced to withdraw from the bout because of travel restrictions out of Russia. He was replaced in the fight by Justin Gaethje, who went on to defeat Tony Ferguson and claim an interim lightweight title. Nurmagomedov has not commented on a potential fight date because of his father's condition. UFC President Dana White, who over the past week has made several public comments wishing Nurmagomedov's father well, has said he is targeting a fight between Khabib and Gaethje for September. And also is also coming from a recent report here that Dana White was pushing for Justin Gaethje versus Khabib happening in Fight Island. So there were reports that it could have happened on July. It could have happened in July. Khabib himself, this was about a month ago, Khabib said that he is expecting a return in September, late August, sometime December. Dana White is now saying it's being pushed to September. But now, with the death of a family member, with the death of a very important person in Khabib's life, like not only his father is also his father and is his coach and is the main one person. If you hear Khabib in any of his interviews, he talks about his father in such a high regard. Like he talks about his father in high regard more than a whole lot of people that I know in my life who talk about their family. And I'm very close to my father. I really am. Me and my family are very close to our father elders and to the elder males in our family. And even we don't talk about our fathers as high praise as Khabib is. Khabib is a very, very major family person who takes his family first more than anything else. I've heard so many interviews of Khabib talking about here's the thing. Khabib almost never has a conversation ever with anybody, whether it be Henry Cejudo, Gaethje, Daniel Cormier, or with members of the media. He always brings up his father all the time because he's always saying, my father's the reason why I'm here. He's pushing me to succeed. He's pushing me to be better. And now, if his father were to pass away, what's next for Khabib? Sadly, we might not know. We really don't, because a major figure like Khabib's father passing away would I don't know how Khabib would handle that psychologically. Actually, it would be incredulous, and also I think if it were to happen, it is understandable for Khabib to take the rest of 2020 off. I mean, 2020 has been. We can all agree that 2020 has been a really, really tough year. I'm lucky, and I'm happy that no one from my personal family has died as due to coronavirus. I know there are a lot of athletes out there, Karl Anthony Towns and some other NBA athletes and other sports personalities out there who have family members who have died. And in Khabib's case, apparently to them, 20 people in his family or among his network or circle have coronavirus. And a couple of them has passed away, and Khabib's father might be one of them. Khabib is in a very tough situation right now, and that it is completely understandable for him to be like, hey, Dana, I know I'm the lightweight champion. I know I was supposed to defend the belt in April. I know we went through some miscommunication issues, which is why the fight got canceled for the May event. But you know what? My father passed away. This coronavirus issue, it had a major blow on my family. I need to take some time to rethink my life, take a break. Also, if you haven't heard Khabib recently in his more recent interviews, I always bring up the interview that he had. He had a talk with a bunch of kids at a gymnasium, and I always am puzzled by one kid who asked him the question, "Hey, Khabib, what are you going to do after mixed martial arts?" And Khabib looks so confused. He doesn't know exactly what to answer. He's looking off to his left. He's looking off to his right. He took a deep breather. Khabib looked like that person. If you were ever asked a very tough question in high school, math or something like that, it's like, where's X plus Y over here? And in order for you to stall time, you're like, I don't. That's what Khabib did. He took a deep breath. He's thinking. I don't know. I genuinely believe. I think Khabib himself doesn't know what he wants to do after mixed martial arts. And considering his father is an integral part to his development as a fighter, I don't know where Khabib's head is going to be at in a couple months. I can only hope for the very best in Khabib. I hope everything goes well for him, because I don't want to see someone's like father get passed away and see a man become incredibly sad and broken, being like, wow, my best friend and my dad, he's gone now. I don't have the motivation to fight anymore. I don't know what's next. Because Khabib's mind is just fighting. Here's the thing, even when the coronavirus was very apparent in the States and in the world, for the first month, Khabib was like, I don't care about coronavirus. That doesn't matter to me. I don't care what's happening in the world. I only care about fighting. Cuts to now, Khabib was like, okay, you know what? I think all of us should really take care of this. This is a really serious issue. Conor McGregor has gone on talking about how much the coronavirus is a serious issue. And so everyone has talked about it, from media members to fighters, talking about how big of an issue this is. Until now, Dana White is still, iffy on the subject.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
And we are back. So I've been talking about Khabib Nurmagomedov's dad having coronavirus, how big of an issue this is. It really is. No matter what your opinion is on what you think about sports or how you think, some states or some countries should be handling the issue, it is an issue. It really is. And this guy, I just talked about how Dana White doesn't see the coronavirus as a major thing. I think he does. I think he just has this game face on whenever he's on camera. I really believe so. And that he has to be like, you know what? I got this. Nothing's gonna kick me down. Yeah. So this is coming in from Fox News. UFC boss Dana White rips media people trying to sabotage the events in response to New York Times reports. This is nothing new here. Dana White, every 3 days, I basically every 3 days, or if you follow his Twitter, every day, talks smack about the media trying to sabotage the events. So this is in this interview here, it said that UFC President Dana White joined Hannity Monday to discuss White's criticism of New York Times reporter who alleged in a recent article that the organization's enforcement of its coronavirus prevention plan was spotty during the UFC 249 event on May 9. We were trying to figure out solutions to the problem and asked, how do you bring sports back safely, and health and safety is an issue for us. White told host Shannon Hannity, every single weekend when we were leading up to these events, we had so many, New York Times and so many other media people trying to sabotage the events, so that it couldn't happen. I mean, this guy just got in the New York Times, interviewed the president of ESPN, Jimmy Pitaro, for 45 minutes, wasted 45 minutes of his time, and never used one of his quotes. White added, "You know why? Because they were positive." White profanely addressed the Times article by reporter Kevin Draper following Wednesday night event, which was held in an empty arena in Jacksonville, Florida, at one point referring to Draper as a diphead, I really can't say it here, from the New York Times. The UFC is the first major sports organization to put on events following a pause of nearly 2 months due to the coronavirus. Hannity asked White when he thought fans would be allowed to return to sporting events. And Dana White responds here, "It's crazy. It's tough to know. You know, you get different information from different people and different sources," White said. "You know, we're going to end up living in a world where you're going to have to sign a waiver to go to a sporting event and, and say, hey, I know that you know the COVID-19 is out there and, I'm going to take the risk and go to the sporting events." White said testing was key to allowing fans to attend events. "I don't know how long that's going to be," White said. It's going to depend on testing. If the level of testing keeps going up. And so far, it has been going up, especially here in California. I am somewhat agreeing and disagreeing with Dana White when it comes to these events. I do genuinely believe that there are some news sources out there that are trying to put it out there and put UFC in a negative light because they're hosting sporting events. But I will say that I will defend Dana White and the UFC for doing that. If they can go and continue to do sporting events with safety in mind, with health concerns in mind, if they follow all the health safety precautions, or at least they followed enough of the health safety precautions to the point that they know fighters can go into these events and not get sick or the virus will not spread, then, I respect that. Because Jacare Ronaldo Souza, one thing that a lot of these, media outlets are, when they cover some sports, I don't think they're actually sports fans to an extent. Because if you read these articles here, by the New York Times and by the Guardian, I'm pretty sure to the writers of the New York Times and the Guardian, their perspective is there's a sporting organization that doesn't care about health and safety precautions, and the UFC are continuing to do so. But here's the truth, the UFC, they're trying to be as safe and as precautionary as it can as it pertains to the virus. They really are. There's no fans. Here's the thing. The UFC, they're not doing anything illegal at all. There's nothing illegal that they're doing in Jacksonville, Florida. Now, it is sketchy. One might argue that there's an unethical aspect to it. Once you dial down to the relationship of Dana White and Vince McMahon and Linda McMahon with Donald Trump, along with the governor of Florida, once you get into that territory, yeah, it's really sketchy and maybe a little bit unethical. But they're not breaking any rules. Not only are they not breaking any rules here, they prevented a fighter from participating. They prevented Jacare Ronaldo Souza, a fighter who was tested, and because he was tested by the UFC, his fight with Uriah Hall didn't happen. So that's a good thing. I think we should start praising the UFC for moments like that, being like, you know what? You say you're going to take the coronavirus thing seriously. Dana White's so off and on about that. I can't tell if he takes it seriously or not. I really can't. But Dana White and the UFC were able to prevent the worst possible outcome in that they prevented a fighter with coronavirus coming into the octagon. So they did their job, and I say good job for the UFC, good job for the brass, good job for Dana White for preventing a fighter who is sick going to the octagon and making everyone else sick. They tried to follow health and safety precautions. Now, I still believe that Dana White thinks the whole coronavirus thing is a little bit bogus to him, and that he believes that it's over the top. People are making it bigger than it actually is. That's his perspective on it, though. So I think he is a little bit lenient on how he does testing and how he's going by the business. I think he's 50-50 on it. A part of him believes, okay, we gotta follow health and safety procedures because we want this event to happen and we want it to happen smoothly. I think that's one part of Dana White. I think the other part of Dana White is like, you know what? We don't have to follow all this stuff. I don't need bossed around. I'm my own man. I don't need to do these health and safety precautions. But I have to, though, because it's really important. But I don't need to. But I don't have to. So that's how I perceive Dana White and representatives of the UFC, in that they want to continue doing their shows and they want to do it with health and safety in mind, but they don't want to do it to the point that they themselves feel like that they don't have their control of their own organization. That's how I perceive it. And so the next major UFC event will be UFC 250. It's going to be on a Saturday, June 6th, about 2 weeks from this point on. About 2 weeks from the day that this is being recorded. And I read reports on how the UFC was supposed to organize post-fight interviews, and from people from Joe Rogan to Cormier to Michael Bisping, several talking heads of the UFC are of the opinion that if you are tested, then you are allowed to go in the octagon and do the interview. Because apparently, Joe Rogan and Michael Bisping, they and Daniel Cormier, they are not supposed to go to the octagon, shake anyone's hands, and do a post-fight interview in the actual octagon. They're not supposed to do that. But I guess they broke protocol and still continue to do it. And Joe Rogan's viewpoint was, hey, if I'm tested, and if everyone here is tested, and there's 100% certainty that everyone here got tested, and no one here actively as of right now has coronavirus, then I should be able to go there and interact with everyone else. Rogan went on to rant about, you know what, it's ridiculous that all of us are sitting in different tables. Why can't we be right next to each other? Because we all got tested. Dana responded to that by saying, you know what, that's his opinion, so whatever. It's so strange how Dana White is super critical of almost everybody, anybody, except for those who have a strong presence in the UFC, a world champion in the UFC, or Joe Rogan, or Michael Bisping, or Daniel Cormier. And so I don't know what to expect from the June 6th show, because as of right now, if you look at the past 3 UFC events, UFC Fight Night, Glover Teixeira versus Anthony Smith, UFC Fight Night 176 with Walt Harris versus Alistair Overeem. If you look at UFC 249, which was a bloody affair, Gaethje and Ferguson were beating the heck out of each other. Ferguson looked really bad. There was a lot of blood spilled onto the octagon. And as of this moment, everything seems fine. All the fighters and all the media members and those who work within the UFC who did the production of the show, they all came out of it healthy for 3 consecutive events. So we got to give some praise for the UFC and Dana White for being able to have these shows go on. And I say right now, I don't see why the UFC shouldn't be doing a show coming up in for June. I know there are a lot of people saying that, UFC should cancel some of their shows, but I say, you know what? If they're following the precautions to an extent, and the results show that they can pull out events without something bad happening. I think 1, maybe 2 fighters did in fact get infected, but they got infected prior to the fights even happening, and the UFC was able to pull them out of the fights and out of the area before things got a lot worse and out of hand. And since the UFC were able to do 3 successful shows with nothing bad happening, then I don't see why they can't do another show. So you're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, coming back right after a short break here with some more MMA news.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. So I did say that there would be an MMA event happening on June 6th for UFC 250, but there's going to be an event coming up May 30th. The only issue here for this is that it's unclear what the card is for the May 30th show. We have about 11 days as the time of this recording to know what fights are going to happen here. And we got one fight coming here. It is being reported in from BloodyElbow.com that Tyron Woodley versus Gilbert Burns is set to headline UFC Fight Night on May 30th. The former UFC welterweight champion has not fought since losing his title to Kamaru Usman of last year. We have no idea where the UFC's final card of May will take place, but we do know the headlining bout. So it was rumored that this event might happen in Las Vegas. Dana White has been pushing for the event to happen in Vegas, but if that doesn't happen, then we can expect it to happen possibly in Jacksonville, Florida, just like the other past 3 recent UFC events. ESPN's Ariel Helwani confirmed on Tuesday that a welterweight battle between former champion Tyron Woodley and rising Brazilian contender Gilbert Burns is lined up for the promotion's May 30th card. UFC rankings have Woodley as the number 1 ranked contender, whereas Gilbert Burns is number 6. Tyron Woodley, 19-4-1, won the UFC welterweight belt by knocking out Robbie Lawler back in 2016. He kept the title successfully over the course of the 3 wins and a draw in his first fight with Stephen Thompson. His reign as champion ended with a one-sided decision loss to Kamaru Usman at UFC 235 last March. Woodley was scheduled to rematch against Lawler last June, only to withdraw due to a hand injury. A main event versus Leon Edwards was set to happen at UFC London this year, but the COVID-19 pandemic resulted in that matchup being cancelled. Gilbert Burns, 18-3, is riding a 5-fight win streak, with 3 of those victories coming after he decided to return back to the welterweight division. After decision wins over Alexei Kuchenko and Gunnar Nelson, the talented BJJ World Champion scored a first-round TKO over veteran title challenger and former Woodley foe Damian Maia. Gilbert Burns angled for a short notice bout with Woodley after the Edwards fight was nixed for March 21st. And while that particular event was postponed altogether, Durinho will get his wish. No location is set for UFC for the May 30th card, but it doesn't look like they'll remain in Florida. Dana White is angling for the UFC Apex facility in Las Vegas, but failing to do so, that they would go to Arizona, which is allowing pro sports without fans. So, Arizona and Jacksonville, Florida. And also that, I can assure you right now that during the time of June, because by June there are going to be some states that will be way more lenient in terms of public events and sporting events happening in their states. Arizona is going to be one of them. California is also going to be one of them. So what's going to happen for the UFC May 30th card? Really, I'm unsure. I really am. Even I myself, I'm not really that hyped up about Tyron Woodley versus Gilbert Burns. Maybe because Gilbert Burns, this was about a month ago, Burns was challenged Tyron Woodley, and then Tyron Woodley completely ignored him. It's hard to be a fan of Tyron Woodley. That's the issue with Tyron. I'm a big fan of Gilbert Burns. I think he's one of the most underrated fighters in all of UFC. Now, do I think Gilbert Burns can defeat Tyron Woodley? Yes, definitely. But when you look at Tyron Woodley, it's the same. I have the same viewpoint of Tyron Woodley that Dana White also has, in that he says Tyron Woodley has all the talent in the world. Tyron Woodley is the perfect fighter. Let's be honest right here. Tyron Woodley can out-wrestle, can out-grapple, and can outstrike anybody in the entire UFC. Anybody. Woodley can even move up a weight class and can do really good, because that's how good of a fighter Tyron Woodley is. Only problem with Woodley, though, is that his mentality of the fight game isn't his number 1 priority, which is understandable. Like, Tyron Woodley works for TMZ. He also has plans. He's very fixated on the Tyron Woodley brand. He has his own entourage. He wants to get into movies. He wants to do music videos. He wants to be a producer for music. He wants to do TV. He wants to do more commercials. He wants to do all this stuff. But the priority of fighting isn't in the forefront, which is understandable. Like, I understand Tyron Woodley's position, really, in that, like, we got guys like Conor McGregor, Ronda Rousey. I think Tyron Woodley wants to be that fighter, that larger-than-life, big-time fighter who's got a out-there personality like a Conor and a Ronda Rousey. The only problem, though, is that Tyron Woodley has a very... He's not that charismatic. He's not that charismatic of a person. If you ever, like, it's still people dislike Tyron Woodley. Even now, I kind of dislike Tyron Woodley because of his multiple interviews that he had along with Wonderboy Stephen Thompson when they were trying to go hype up the fight. Woodley comes across as a very bitter person, very bitter. He expects more of the UFC. He expects Dana White to really push him to be the next star of the UFC. If you watch one of the more recent MMA on Points, the title for the MMA Point video was Top 10 Fighters That Dana White Doesn't Like to Be as Champions, and Tyron Woodley is number 1 there. Woodley and Dana White, they're kind of cool now, but it's still, the relationship is still kind of iffy in the sense that Tyron Woodley wants to be the face of the organization, but the thing though, he feels like he already is there. It's so strange. Like, he got the belt. He defended the belt in really boring fights, with the major exception being the Darren Till fight, to which he just dominated Darren Till in a one-sided fashion. That I think, like, wow, if Tyron Woodley can fight every fight like he does when he fight against Darren Till, then Tyron Woodley is without a doubt a superstar in the world of sports. But he looks so unmotivated all the time. If you also haven't heard of Tyron Woodley's interview that he had with Joe Rogan in the Jerry podcast, he outright says, I don't like fighting. I'm not comfortable in mixed martial arts. I don't find it enjoyable. I don't find it fun. And yeah, of course, that's him coming off a loss. But even in the fight against Kamaru Usman fought Woodley. When you look at Kamaru Usman versus Tyron Woodley, honestly, how I perceive it, looks like he didn't want to be there. Like, he would rather he didn't even look disappointed that he lost the belt. He doesn't look disappointed. He doesn't look disappointed when someone's out wrestling him. He doesn't look disappointed that he's not being really aggressive here. Tyron Woodley is that great fighter that has all the skills, has all the physicals, but just doesn't want to be there. He doesn't seem like he is fighting for the paycheck without a doubt, and fighting for the brand, for his Tyron Woodley brand. And whatever you think the Tyron Woodley brand, how valuable that actually is, doesn't really matter. He genuinely believes that he's this, like, great big superstar in the UFC, and from the perspective of multiple fighters, if you look at fighters like Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, Gilbert Burns, they all say extensively all the time, even though Colby Covington kind of overreaches at times when he does interviews, I can kind of believe the idea that Tyron Woodley, for the most part, has been ducking fights. I can see it. I can see Tyron Woodley saying, you know what, and he has done this. He says, I don't want to fight against Gilbert Burns. Why? Because it would damage my Tyron Woodley brand. I'm too big for that stuff. Man. I kind of hate/like Tyron Woodley. I like Tyron Woodley for his ability to be a great fighter. I don't like Tyron Woodley in terms... I'm looking at the BloodyElbow.com right now, and whenever they show a picture of a fighter, it always is a fighter in the best possible you can ever view them. So if they do a headline by Conor McGregor, they show Conor McGregor like yelling. If they show Ronda Rousey, they'll show the Ronda Rousey face. If they show Khabib Nurmagomedov, they show him with the wig and the championship belt. For Tyron Woodley, you know what image Bloody Elbow has him at? It's him giving the most bored look ever at the camera, barely clinching his out of focus fist, looking like that he doesn't want to be there. He's just there just because he's being paid to. And it's hard to like him. It really is hard. It's that difficult to like him. But who would win in this fight, though, between Gilbert Burns and Tyron Woodley? If the fight were to happen on May 30th, I expect it to happen, honestly, in Florida or Arizona. If Tyron Woodley is motivated, Tyron Woodley can easily defeat Gilbert Burns first round KO without a doubt. That's if he's motivated. If he's not motivated, you know what's going to happen? Gilbert Burns is just going to outbox Tyron Woodley in a very boring fight, which Gilbert Burns is going to try. Gilbert Burns will try to make the fight exciting. I hope the first thing Gilbert Burns does is that he's able to go... If Gilbert Burns is fighting against an unmotivated Tyron Woodley, I hope Gilbert Burns just blitzes Woodley. I really do hope so. Just because, like, as a fan, from a fan's perspective, we want to see some action. And Tyron Woodley is either a beast athlete that you think, oh my god, no one can beat this guy, or, oh man, Tyron Woodley, he's like the most boring dude ever. Why am I watching this event? I'm getting gypped here. I don't want to pay money for a Tyron Woodley fight. He is so boring. So, a motivated Tyron Woodley stomps Gilbert Burns, first round KO, without a doubt. An unmotivated Tyron Woodley, Gilbert Burns wins. And then Tyron Woodley will say, well, I don't care about fighting, so of course I lost. I mean, I'm just here for a paycheck. You're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast. Coming back right after the short break here with some more news.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And we are back. So Eddie Bravo has talked about his experience as a coach for Tony Ferguson, and this coming in from MMAJunkie.com. Headline with Eddie Bravo describes cold feet while coaching Tony Ferguson at UFC 249. I wasn't ready for it. This is being written by Simon Simano. Tony Ferguson absorbed plenty of punishment, he really did, throughout his interim lightweight title bout with Justin Gaethje, but it wasn't until after the fourth round that Eddie Bravo realized this guy was in trouble. Really? Fourth round? You didn't think about it? Because Justin Gaethje was defeated Tony Ferguson in every single round. Every single round, Gaethje outboxed him. At that moment, though, in the fourth round apparently, Bravo got the surprise of his life. Right when the bell rung after the fourth round, Rashad Holloway turns around and goes, Eddie, get in there. I wasn't ready for it, Bravo said in this week's episode of the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. I wasn't ready to walk in there. Bravo, a renowned jiu-jitsu coach, was one of three men in Ferguson's corner at UFC 249, but he did not envision himself having to talk Ferguson into rallying to win a fight he was clearly losing heading into the fifth round. So I walked in there going, what the F? I'm not an MMA head coach, Bravo said. This is the fourth round, he's hurt, and plus, my car got broken into last week. They stole my glasses, I need my glasses, I'm pretty blind, so I didn't realize how cut up he was until I walked up to him. Okay, I'm supposed to give him advice? This wide receiver coach, it was a mistake for me to go in there. It was a mistake. Bravo and Ferguson long have had a close relationship. Bravo joined Ferguson's camp for UFC 249 while he was scheduled to challenge lightweight champion Khabib on April 18. The thought was simple. Bravo would polish Ferguson's ground game in preparation for Khabib Nurmagomedov's wrestling heavy attack. But that fight fell off 2 weeks prior to its original date because of the global coronavirus pandemic. It came Justin Gaethje, who presented a different challenge from Khabib with a stand and trade approach. Bravo, however, remained part of the camp and made the trip to Jacksonville, Florida to be in Ferguson's corner. Bravo was uncomfortable in the background and never imagined being thrust into the spotlight. I have never been a head MMA coach ever in my life. Never wanted to be. Never wanted to be, and even to this day, I've never been. That's not me. I'm not Trevor Whitman. That guy's amazing. I'm not Greg Jackson, not Duke Rufus. That's a whole nother level. Head coach. That's a guy that should be talking to the fighter that's sitting down. I'm the wide receiver coach. I'm the guy that just throws in blank on the side. What? I'm the wide receiver coach. I'm the guy that just throws in blank on the side. Especially in a stand-up fight. I shouldn't have been mic'd because I knew this is going to be a stand-up fight. If the fight was going to go to the ground, if it was the Khabib fight, yeah, maybe there's going to be a lot of groundwork. Maybe it makes sense for television to mic me. But when they're miking me up, I'm like, I'm just there for the emotional support because it's going to be a stand-up war. So Eddie Bravo goes on even more extensively in when talking about Tony Ferguson. So also, if you didn't know, Tony Ferguson, you would think a guy who got pummeled as much as he did would, just stay in the bed, relax, rest up. Nope. He already filmed himself via Instagram. He got someone to film him via Instagram to go and start dancing, salsa dancing as he's walking around in the hospital. Super goofy. But Eddie Bravo here. Also, Eddie Bravo pretty goofy. Like, how can I coach? Coaches need glasses. That's very, very interesting to me, though. But honestly, it's Eddie Bravo was unlucky. He was placed in a position. By the way, I didn't know what Tony Ferguson's head coach was thinking. He was like, okay, you know what? This probably was thinking. He's thinking, okay, my advice to Ferguson through the past 4 rounds have not been working. I need somebody to add, some input. Hey, Eddie Bravo, do you have anything to add? And Eddie Bravo is just there, being like, I don't know what to do. Just win the fight, man. Just have all hearts. Like, I'm pretty sure Eddie Bravo gave pretty bad advice. He probably said something along the lines of, okay, Ferguson, things are not going well for you, but keep at it. That's what I'm imagining Eddie Bravo said for the fight, though. Maybe not. But overall, dude, Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje was just a better fighter that night. He really was. I don't blame Eddie Bravo or any of Ferguson's coaches, because here's the thing. Yes, although Ferguson was prepping up for specifically Khabib for the past 5 weeks, Justin Gaethje hasn't been prepping up to fight against anybody for the past 5 weeks. Except for Khabib. Khabib takes a whole lot of time. But I would think it'd be a lot more easier for Tony Ferguson to make the transition for training camp for a Justin Gaethje compared to Khabib. Because even Gaethje said himself, he's like, I would fight anybody except Khabib because I need more prep time for Khabib. And although Tony Ferguson has had all the prep time in the world, he's had years of prep time against Khabib. But now I would think, okay, so I know Ferguson wants to fight Khabib, but now he's fighting against Justin Gaethje. Style-wise, these two are perfect for one another. Both fighters fight each other the way the other fighter wants to. Ferguson and Gaethje's pace are pretty much equal. It's just a matter of who's going to land their shots. And yes, although Tony Ferguson he wanted to prep up for a fight against Khabib, he instead got prepped up against Justin Gaethje. Both fighters have about the exact same time to prep up this fight. And considering the fact that coronavirus has been an ongoing issue for the past several months, I think Tony Ferguson's camp would be like, okay, let's stop with the jiu-jitsu training. Like, Eddie Bravo, I love you, man, but you're not part of this camp anymore because we need to focus now primarily on boxing and striking. And it always bothered me, why is Eddie Bravo still coaching Tony Ferguson after knowing that the Ferguson vs. Khabib fight is off? Because then I'll be thinking, if I was Ferguson, I'll be like, okay, I'm wasting valuable hours of my time in a day focused on this reverse wrestling aspect of my game that I'm not going to use against something like Justin Gaethje. So, you know what, Eddie Bravo, man, I hope you can watch me. You can watch at home. You can watch the fight, dude. But really, I don't really need you for this fight. I need somebody else. I'm going to go get a striking coach or another striking coach for another 5 weeks. I think that would be the smartest decision. Because even Eddie Bravo himself, he's like, I'm just there for emotional support. Well, he didn't literally have to be there. He could have been like, oh man, Ferguson, you're a great fighter, dude, but you don't need me right now. I'm going to watch. I'm going to provide emotional support for you from my house, okay? Because here's the thing, though. Assistant coaches can talk to their fighters. You do know that, right? Have you seen a basketball game or a football game or an NHL game? There's an entire line and row of assistant coaches. There's for every basketball team, there's one head coach and then 3-4 assistant coaches. For NFL, you've got a plethora of coaches. You got offensive coach, defensive coach, special teams coach, head coach, and then you got the trainer. Honestly, here's the thing. You can bring an entire army as a coaching staff. You can. I don't think there's a rule behind that. Like, if Ferguson wants, like, his entire entourage of, like, it's kind of like Floyd Mayweather when he goes into his fights. He has an entire entourage of, like, 10, 20 people there. There's nothing stopping Ferguson from getting as many people as he wants. But in this scenario, though, I would imagine Ferguson being like, we don't really need you, Eddie. Like, I'm going to focus on boxing. So, I say it's not fair to say, oh, it was unfair for Tony Ferguson because he wasn't prepped up for this fight. He had the exact same prep time as Justin Gaethje for this fight. They both have the style that they want to fight. They both fight at the same pace. This fight could have been either person's fight. I personally attest to Tony Ferguson's loss against Justin Gaethje. A part of it is because the weight cut. I think the weight cut really did drain him. I believe so. And also the fact that Justin Gaethje was just a better fighter. He just really was. And his cornermen were giving him much better advice. Because if you listen to Justin Gaethje's cornermen, they're like, hey, Justin, stop being reckless. Be more free-flowing with your arms. Be more dynamic with striker. Try to be a precise, precision-based striker. Don't try to throw out Hail Marys out there for the sake of, you can do that once or twice in a while. But remember, try to be a consistent, precise striker first. And then Gaethje, from that advice, then moved on towards the second, and third round, fourth round as a precise striker instead of the guy who just randomly throws his arms out there and putting himself in bad position. I didn't hear any good advice from the Ferguson corner. I heard a bunch of good advice from the Justin Gaethje corner, but not from the Ferguson corner. I really didn't. Once again, I'm not blaming Eddie Bravo for this because, a coaching crew is more than 3 people, okay? Like, it should be like striking coach, submission coach, and then a third coach who's got a combination of the two who can provide their own input. That's what I believe in. So, yeah, Justin Gaethje, he ultimately was the better fighter than Tony Ferguson that day. So, you're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, coming back right after the short break here.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And welcome back to the podcast here. So in recent episodes, I've talked about how difficult it is for fighters to go make a lot of money. Well, one person who is making money, who is not a fighter, is Joe Rogan. This is coming in from SB Nation, MMAmania.com. That Joe Rogan's podcast headed to Spotify, exclusive deal reportedly worth $100 million. Joe Rogan was already making a hefty bank off the success of his podcast brainchild, the Joe Rogan Experience, but the Ultimate Fighting Championship color commentator Bank's account is about to explode. That's because Joe Rogan signed a lucrative licensing deal to have his podcast stream exclusively on Spotify in late 2020. That is reportedly worth in the neighborhood of $100 million, according to Wall Street Journal. The podcast can currently be found on Apple iTunes and YouTube and will continue to do so for the next few months. Later this year, however, it will move exclusively to Spotify, while the exact date of the permanent move is unknown at this time. All the show's previous content will be on Spotify starting September 1, 2020. Hello everybody, I have an announcement. The podcast is moving to Spotify, Rogan said in an Instagram video post. I signed a multi-year licensing agreement with Spotify that will start on September 1st. Starting on September 1st, the entire GRE library will be available on Spotify as well as all the other platforms. Then somewhere around the end of the year, it will become exclusive to Spotify, including the video version of the podcast, he added before assuring everyone that nothing about the show itself will change. It will be the exact same show. I am not going to be an employee of Spotify. We are going to be working with the same crew doing the exact same show. The only difference is that it will now be available on the largest audio platform in the world. Nothing else will change. It will be free to you, he continued. You just have to go to Spotify to get it. We are very excited to begin the new chapter of GRE, and I hope you are there when we cross over. The Joe Rogan Experience is one of the most downloaded podcasts in the world, so it's no surprise to see Spotify step up to the plate with a huge offer to steal Joe Rogan, as well as his millions of listeners away from Apple. As far as Joe Rogan's UFC career, that will continue to go strong and retiring from the fight game, is something that isn't crossing Joe Rogan's mind at the moment. That's because the promotion has cut back on its duties and traveling obligations thanks to the addition of some help in the form of Dan Hardy, Dominic Cruz, Paul Felder, Daniel Cormier, and Michael Bisping as they take the role as being fight analysts for UFC Fight Night shows and UFC on ESPN shows. For the most part, you're only going to see Joe Rogan perform at a UFC show as the color commentator once per month. So Joe Rogan, man, he's got a great gig going for him, though. The only problem I see with this, though, is that most of the people who learned about Joe Rogan's podcast came from YouTube. And so, stemming from this, though, we're going to see a lot less Joe Rogan highlights being posted onto YouTube, depending on the deal. From what I'm guessing Spotify got a deal that they are going to own the rights to the video footage. And so, if there's anybody who were to cut and paste, post like a short 5-minute, 13-minute video of the Joe Rogan podcast, to which he says something weird or strange, I'm afraid that it might be copyrighted. That's what I'm definitely afraid of. Because so far, I don't think there's been any copyright issues so far as it pertains to the GRE podcast. Because here's the thing. The majority of people that learned about the Joe Rogan podcast stem from watching highlights of it on YouTube. That's how I learned about the Joe Rogan podcast. My friends who don't even watch MMA, UFC, or even know about Fear Factor, they learned about Joe Rogan purely because he was randomly recommended on their video feeds, to which he says something weird and wacky, like a weird internet meme. There's a random video out there to which somebody like cut and edited videos of Joe Rogan talking to this one Korean lady, and then it was implied that Joe Rogan was it was an evil serial killer, and then like he abducted people. It was so bizarre, and he was like really off his mind with weed. It was so awkward and weird and strange, but the editing was so quirky and funny that like it became really hysterical. It was a dark, hysterical joke, but it was such a bizarre video. To which like there's also like videos like Joe Rogan talking to himself. Someone edited it, where it's Joe Rogan talking about DMT to himself, and then he'll say the most wackiest thing ever. Like, you know what, man? Life is full of weird, bizarre aspects of life that you gotta appreciate. By the way, did you see the video of the moose killing a guy with a police car? Hey, young Jamie, can you put up the video of the moose killing a guy with a police car? It's so weird and random. That's why I like about the Joe Rogan podcast. It's a really smart guy trying to talk smarter than he actually is, and then relying on these like philosophical pseudoscience stuff in order to prep himself up more, which leads to very funny like arguments and conversations in his podcast. Also, the fact that, I did like Fear Factor growing up, and he's a really good commentator. That really helps up also, definitely. But you know what? I don't know what the future is for the GRE. Hopefully I can see some more GRE videos being uploaded onto YouTube. Even though the agreement says he's exclusively on Spotify, I want to see more Joe Rogan experience videos popping up, because it's so fun when they're edited, because his podcasts are like an hour long, and it's a lot simpler if you can go and like cut that hour podcast into small snippets of entertainment, like 10 minutes or 5 minutes or 7-minute conversations or dialogue. That's what is a majority of people watch Joe Rogan podcast videos, not for the actual 2-hour, 3-hour podcast interview, but because they like the small snippets, the 10-minute aspect, the 12-minute arguments, the 13-minute debates, or the 20-minute rants. Those are enjoyable. And so this is being reported in by MMAJunkie.usatoday.com that Daniel Cormier says John Jones wanting Francis Ngannou, one of the most gangster things in the world. Daniel Cormier can never be called John Jones' biggest fan, but he admitted he respects him chasing after the heavyweight division's most devastating knockout artist. John Jones, the current UFC light heavyweight champion, has flirted with the idea of heavyweight before, but has created a lot of interest after discussing the possibility of moving up to face top heavyweight contender Francis Ngannou. Cormier has twice fought John Jones in one of the most heated rivalries in all of the UFC, but the rivalry won't stop Cormier from praising John Jones for wanting to fight Ngannou. He goes on to say, "I will insult John Jones on any day of the week, but I will also give him credit where credit is due. But I truly believe that this Francis Ngannou thing is one of the most gangster things in the world," Cormier said on Ariel Helwani's MMA show. "Why would you be afraid of anyone, especially if you're a guy that has the accomplishments of John Jones? Why? That's the thing. I don't get when people say, me or John Jones, that we're afraid of somebody. It's the most asinine thing of the world." Jones has a line of light heavy contenders chomping at the bit to go face him, but really, at this point, the only two people that are most noteworthy to go fight against John Jones would be Jean Blachowicz and Dominic Reyes. Other than those two fighters, I don't really see anyone else in the light heavyweight division competing against John Jones. So I can see the idea of John Jones going up to heavyweight. But then again, this is the UFC, anything can happen. I remember, didn't John Jones initially join the UFC fighting in the heavyweight division, and then he went down? Because here's the thing, John Jones is he's always bigger than anybody he fights in the light heavyweight division. And then when you see him, try to make the transition over to heavyweight, he looks a lot more smaller. So I don't know how a John Jones versus Francis Ngannou matchup would be. I really don't. If I were to make a prediction between who would win in a fight in John Jones versus Francis Ngannou, I say John Jones would win the fight if he was a very patient fighter and he can know how to tag Francis Ngannou without being overwhelmed by his striking. Because that's the biggest issue with Francis Ngannou, is that yes, the guy is an insane powerhouse. He can knock you out with one punch. But how good is cardio and how good is his striking accuracy? Yes, I have heard from Francis Ngannou's coaches and cornermen saying that Ngannou has developed a lot more better as an accurate striker. And you know what? He is an accurate striker, but how long can he maintain that in a championship fight? How long can he maintain that by the end of the second or third round? I'm a firm believer that other than Stipe Miocic, I don't feel like Francis Ngannou has been tested yet. Yes, he lost to Derek Lewis, but that was more of a case of Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou not wanting to beat in the first place. They're just way too intimidated of each other to go for a knockout. That fight should have been the most exciting 10-second fight ever, but it ended up being a complete snorefest. So what would I expect from a John Jones versus Francis Ngannou fight? I think John Jones is going to defeat Francis Ngannou if he is able to poke Ngannou, fight very smart, and dodge whatever Hail Marys of punches Ngannou can go throughout in the first round. If John Jones can survive the first round without really getting that much hurt or without really being damaged all that much, without being overwhelmed by Ngannou's power, then I say John Jones is going to win the fight via unanimous decision, winning in the second and third round. Without a doubt, I say John Jones wins the third round, and the only way Francis Ngannou is going to defeat Jones is by knocking him out, because as the fight continues on, Francis Ngannou's cardio and striking ability dwindles down. I would much prefer a John Jones versus Francis Ngannou fight over a Daniel Cormier versus Francis Ngannou fight, which is another fight that's been thrown out there, just because I could imagine Cormier doing a double leg takedown onto Ngannou for 3-5 rounds, and the fight could be really boring. At least for John Jones versus Francis Ngannou, anything can happen, and that's the exciting part. So you're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, coming back right after this short break.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Hello and welcome back to the show here. You're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast. I am your host, Arnel De Leon, and I found a very weird article here that I think would be very interesting for you guys to go listen. And it is 50 random MMA facts you never knew. It's written by Scott Harris here. It is said that serious MMA fans know their sports, but no one knows everything. Here are 50 MMA facts guaranteed to win your next bar bet and wow the ladies. Okay, first off, I don't know what to expect from this. I have not read the article at all. All I know is that it says 50 random MMA facts, and as an avid MMA fan, let's see if I don't know this. And to any of the listeners, if you guys don't know any of these facts, then well, this is going to be educational. First random interesting MMA fact here, the UFC belt really is made of gold. At a glance, it may look like nothing more than a strap of Taiwan's finest, but apparently it is real gold or gold plating anyway. From what I can tell, the UFC Championship belts, along with pretty much every single other championship belt, are fashioned by two guys, Dave Milliken and Javier Cortez. And for those eager to actualize their dream of glory without having to fight anybody or go to the gym or anything like that, you can own your own gold-plated belt for about $1,000. Actually, I honestly wouldn't mind having the old school UFC belts, where it's like gigantic, all gold, doesn't look like a Power Rangers belt. Random fact number 49, the author of the UFC pay-per-view theme song. No iPod playlist is complete without it. Are you ready? Drumroll please. The song is Face the Pain by the band Stem. I already knew that. Face the Pain has to be one of the most cringiest songs ever. Even my mom and dad, who are not into new metal music at all, when they hear that song, all they do is shake their head and kind of start giggling to themselves. Face the Pain is such a cringy song, and when I say cringy, I mean when I think about mid-early 2000s UFC, I think of some dad wearing a bright blue Affliction shirt with his like trucker cap with a beer, being like, yeah, fighting, woo, while listening to Face the Pain. That's what I imagine early mid-2000s UFC. The first fighter to wear gloves, UFC 14 was the first event to require gloves, but now the ubiquitous open-fingered fight glove made its first appearance in 1994 when pro boxer Melton Bowen wore them into the octagon against Steve Jenham at UFC 4. Another random fact that I do know now is that Zuffa is indeed a real word. When we think about Zuffa, we think the Zuffa company, the organization of the Fertitta brothers. But apparently, it's an Italian word for scuffle. What is Tito Ortiz's real name? The answer to that, though, is that Tito Ortiz's real name is Jacob Christopher Ortiz. And now you know. Random fact, the Octagon was inspired by Chuck Norris. One could make a case for adding the UFC signature cage on the list. The 1980 ninja film, The Octagon, starring Norris, has become a cult hit among martial arts film enthusiasts. I know. What involving Chuck Norris has it become a cult hit? It's possible, or it's just a coincidence, but maybe it's not. In the film, the climactic fight takes place in something called The Octagon. The actual Octagon cage was first used by the Cage of Rage promotion back in 1993, but for the UFC, some of the promotion's forebears, including the Gracies, commissioned art director Jason Couson to officially design The Octagon, which the UFC promptly and smartly trademarked. Quick, name a UFC champion who only won 2 fights. Now, I'm not saying won 2 fights in the UFC, I'm saying who won 2 fights in the grand scheme of things of mixed martial arts. I know, one person would say, well, how the heck did Brock Lesnar end up getting a title fight against Randy Couture after defeating Heath Herring and losing to Frank Mir? How did that happen? But you know what? There was a UFC champion who only had 2 fights under his belt that he won. Most series fans know that Gerard Gordeau's 30-second knockout of Talia Tully at UFC 1 was the first fight in UFC history. It also is fairly well known that a kick from Gordeau sent one of Tully's tooth flying into the crowd, but apparently that's the part where it got really interesting. According to Eric Krosch's book, Brawl, 2 more of Tully's teeth embedded into Gordeau's foot. To avoid an open wound, doctors decided not to remove the teeth in the cage. Gordeau fought twice more that night, with 2 teeth stuck in his foot. Of course, he lost to Royce Gracie in the final, to the surprise of not many. That wound became badly infected. After returning home, Gordeau spent many weeks at the doctor getting treatments. So yeah, oh my gosh, can you imagine that? Walking around, so it already hurts to get a needle stuck in your feet. It's happened to me multiple times where I'm walking and all of a sudden there's a pin or needle on the floor, impales my foot, and it hurts. And I can't imagine fighting with that kind of pain, with 2 teeth being stuck on your foot. Yikes. Oh man, early UFC was weird. It really was. Random factor, Dana White has never had a pro boxing fight. I'm pretty sure he's never had a legit pro boxing fight. I'm pretty sure most people know that Dana White is pretty much a fake tough guy and that he talks a lot of game, but I'm pretty sure he'd be the last person who would go on an octagon. I know he's made threats to guys like Ken Shamrock and Tito Ortiz and like Oscar De La Hoya, but we all know if Dana White's talking bark really because he knows that nothing's really going to happen. I think even he understands that. But can you imagine Dana White in a real boxing fight? It's always been a personal dream of mine of wanting to see Dana White fights against everybody he's ever talked trash to. It would be hilarious. And there's actually a director who did that one time. His name was Uwe Boll. And Uwe Boll was this awful horror movie director. And he would challenge his critics to boxing matches to anyone who didn't like his films. And then he actually boxed them and kicked their butt. Now, I would love to see Dana White in the octagon or in a boxing ring, but that's not going to happen anytime soon in a legitimate scenario. The only way we can see Dana White in that scenario where he's fighting somebody would be in the UFC 3 video game. Not joking, I've brought over friends over and we'd go play the UFC 3 video game, and Dana White, without a doubt, is like one of the most overpowered fighters in the entire game. I don't know why. Probably Dana was asking, okay, man, give me the best stats, give me the highest numbers, give me the best skills. And in that game, Dana White is throwing these like spinning roundhouse kicks and flying elbows, Superman punches. And Dana White has one of the highest striking numbers in the entire game. It's insane. This guy who doesn't fight has one of the most overinflated highest stats across the entire game and is one of the best fighters to play as in this virtual game that's supposed to simulate real life sports. It's hilarious. It really is. The only time you would ever kind of see Dana White get knocked out was when they were doing press for UFC 3. There's video out there. They have like Nate or Nick Diaz. I mean, no. It was Conor McGregor versus Dana White. There's one video where Dana White is playing as Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor is playing as himself. And then there's another video, a very competitive fight between Dana White versus Conor McGregor in their virtual selves playing as themselves. And it was hilarious because Dana White was super close to defeating Conor McGregor in the first matchup, and then Conor McGregor out of nowhere had a comeback victory. And then after that, Conor McGregor proceeds to stomp Dana White in the UFC 3 game 3 times. So there's actually like a video reaction of Dana White seeing his virtual self getting his butt whooped in a video game, and he just has like the biggest like, what the heck is happening in my life face? Like, oh my gosh, and everyone's giggling about it. Conor McGregor's running around with those arms being like, yeah! If you haven't seen it yet, put up Conor McGregor versus Dana White on YouTube. You'll see them play the video game, and then you can freeze at the image to which you can look at Dana White's face as Conor McGregor's video game character version knocks out and like does like a right hook and does ground and pound onto Dana White's like virtual character. And Dana White has this weird look that should be plastered on like someone's wall for hilarity. It's really amusing. I recommend everyone to watch it. It really is. Who is the first winner of a UFC post-fight bonus? It took this long. Dana White first doled out bonus money for fights, knockout, and submission night victories at UFC 70 in 2007. That night, Michael Bisping and Eric Sinosic took home Fight of the Night honors, and Gabriel Gonzaga got KO of the night with his head kick on Mirko Cro Cop. But because of Terry Adams' chokeout of Matt Grice happened before the other two that performance, Dub Submission of the Night was the first bonus winner ever. I don't know, is Submission Night still a thing? Because if there were 8 fights in a card and only one person won a fight via submission, would he automatically get a bonus? I'm unsure about that. But he shouldn't get a bonus then, considering it's the only submission of the night then. But I'm also supportive that all fighters should go get a pay raise. So that's just me. And that does it for today's show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And thank you for listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps out. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.